session. My name is Cristina Ricaurte. I'm the Vice President for Supply Chain Solutions for the Americas at SAP. Don't worry, I'm not going to sell you anything just now. Keith, I don't have any stories to talk about with my kids, but this is my first time in Vegas. So I hope that we hear a lot of stories that I can retell next time that I'm here. So we're going to talk about the impact of tariffs and inflation in our supply chains. You were talking about inspiring next generations on supply chain issues. So let's see if we can learn something today. And for this panel, I would like to invite my fellow panelists. In this particular order, we have Carlos Herrera, Head of Procurement North America at Elidabeauty. Welcome. We have Michelle Dixon, VP of Global Manufacturing of Alcon. Please sit. Yeah. John F. Mao. That sounds very Kennedy. Director of Operations and Supply Chain Strategy of Ocean Spray. Ido Segev, I practice your name. Vice President of Intel Foundry at Intel. And last, Alex Mesanza, Director of Global Supply Chain at Corning. Very, very happy to be spending this with you. This is how it's gonna go. I'm gonna let you introduce yourself for 1 minute. You introduce yourself and your company, and then we're gonna kick off this conversation with some questions. You ready?
Ready.
Okay, let's go, Carlos.
Thank you, Cristina. Thank you so much, and thank you for the invite. It's amazing, and it's really important to discuss this topic, which is always in every day in our agendas. I'm Carlos Herrera. I'm leading procurement for North America for Elidabeauty. Elidabeauty is a company which manage the iconic brand from Unilever that we were recently acquired for Yellow Woods. So brands like Q-Tips might sound familiar for you, Santai, Noxima, all these brands we are now handling separate, and it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you so much.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dixon. I work for Alcon, and Alcon is a company that's been in existence since 1945, started by two pharmacists in Fort Worth, Texas. Over the years, we've become a leader in ophthalmic equipment and treatments. We focus on all aspects of the eye, and our mission is to help people see brilliantly. So very happy to be here, and it's my first NASCES conference.
Awesome. Good afternoon. My name is John Mao. I'm the Director of Operations and Supply Chain Strategy at Ocean Spray. We are a nearly 100-year-old cranberry cooperative that supports nearly 700 farming families across the United States, Canada, and Chile. I'm super excited to be here. This is my third NASCES.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Good afternoon. Thanks for having me. I'm Ido Segev from Intel Foundry. I'm leading strategic planning. Strategic planning basically has three main buckets: capacity management, network design, and site selection. That's one bucket. Another bucket is CapEx management. My team is basically managing the CapEx for the company. And the third bucket is basically the key business processes for strategic planning, like VLRP, LRP, SNOP. Those are kind of the drum beats of the organization. Thank you for having me.
Hello, everyone. I'm Alex Mesanza, and I'm Director of Global Supply Management for Corning. Corning is a 175-year-old company, and just to put into perspective, we worked on the first light bulb for Thomas Edison, so that's how far back we go. But it's a company that's constantly innovating. It's at the forefront of several key innovations in ceramics, glass, and fiber optics. So if you enjoy high-speed internet, if you enjoy the benefits of AI, and if you have a mobile device in your pocket, you can thank Corning for those innovations.
Thank you. So again, welcome everybody. I'm very excited to be learning today. As you know, inflations, tariffs are critically impacting supply chains, everything from logistics, manufacturing to profitability. So I'm actually very excited to kick off the conversation And I think I'm going to start with ladies first. Michelle, you're going to get the first question, but everybody please feel free to enrich the conversation. I think everyone is keen to learning from you as well. So, Michelle, when tariffs were first introduced, what challenges did you face? And I guess we're talking about pulling data from your suppliers, sourcing data. And what lessons did you learn, especially around visibility?
There were no shortage of challenges. So April 2nd will forever be ingrained in my brain. The days leading up to Liberation Day, we knew this was coming, right? We had a lot of discussions around the tariffs and the impact. But in the days leading up to it, I was on my way to vacation trying to beat the spring break rush. And I thought, well, it should be easy enough. I need to quantify what the impact's going to be in my franchise. So I make a call expecting that there would be a report generated, and lo and behold, no less than 6 people that I had to call throughout this process. I realized that it was going to be a little bit more complicated than just generating one report, when we had to assess not just finished goods, but also the raw materials. So we have 3,000 suppliers and right around 160,000 SKUs in the company.
Wow.
Trying to map out and pull together all the information and the impacts for where those raw material suppliers are, and what plants and what locations they're sourcing to, and then what markets are is the revenue being generated from the products that we're shipping out, and what plants are they coming from? It was extremely complicated to pull together and quantify the tariff impact. And oh, by the way, we were also getting ready for earnings calls. So it was pretty obvious to us that we needed to be taking this data, which happened to come from, we're all on the same instance of the same ERP system throughout our company. So it was quite easy, after all, to pull together that data from the system to be able to generate reports. And now what used to take us, it would take us probably a week to compile everything and roll as tariffs came up. And now as tariffs would change, because we're still having some fluctuation, we can pull it in a matter of minutes, and we know exactly what the financial impact's going to be. So we've come a long way since April.
Wow. Any lessons besides the having things ready and using technology to your advantage?
I think it's just being able to really anticipate all the use cases that you're going to come across, so that you can get a head start on generating that data so that you can have it at your fingertips.
Thank you. Anybody else wants to add something?
Well, the only thing I would add, that what we found is that it's very much similar to our quality management systems. When in quality, we know how to get to our suppliers, sub-suppliers, and we know how to manage it very, very deep into the supply chain. We did not have the same capabilities, and we still don't. We are working now to develop similar capabilities for tariff impact. And this is kind of, we know how to do it in one side of the company, we just need to bring it to the other.
I guess one of the difficulties is also to take that strategy. After you have the strategy on paper, and then you actually need to execute and under pressure. You were talking that you were preparing all of this, but also preparing for earning call and day-to-day and your vacation. So anything there you want to share on how did you actually make the strategy happen and execute?
Well, if anybody learns the secret into how to do it all, just let me know. But no, I mean, seriously, yeah, having a plan for something, we talk about how we have our manufacturing arranged around the globe, but then as soon as the tariffs go into effect, how do you go into execution mode and make sure that we are managing ourselves in such a way that we're getting the least amount of impact? I think now we have a process where we play out those scenarios, and I think that helps quite a bit to have the war games, the scenario planning sessions. And it actually, I think, probably put us in a good position for whenever the tariffs did take effect.
Yeah. I know that, I think Keith also said it at the beginning, that we learned resilience with COVID and so on, and it seems like it's a topic that is getting old, but then you have this and you're again thinking about resiliency. So thank you very much, Michelle. Alex, now it's you. How have tariffs forced you to go deeper to tier 2, tier 3 suppliers? And what are any of surprising risks or opportunities that you uncover on those levels? And I remember when we were discussing and preparing for these panels that you were always emphasizing that we cannot stay at the superficial level, but you actually need to dig deeper and uncover. So if you want to share your experience, please.
Sure. So at Corning, we always try to do that, not so much from a tariff perspective, but from a supply assurance perspective. When we were faced with this tariff situation, it was not a matter of if, but when some of those tier 2, tier 3 suppliers might start to experience impacts by tariffs. And while we had some pretty good idea for some of the key suppliers, there were some that we still had not tapped into that kind of analysis. So one of the things that we did right at the beginning was try to leverage AI to find out where the exposure was. That was even before reaching out to suppliers and saying, hey, we want to partner with you, just to have a base understanding. Now, it's not a magic bullet, right? You can get some information. There's a lot of public information that AI can dig and connect the dots and bring you information, but still requires quite a bit of validation by the different teams to make sure that the information makes sense, right? So that was one aspect of it. The other one, what we did is we actually, in an effort to deepen the relationship with the suppliers, we invited them to work closely with Corning to open up their supply chain so that we could understand together where the risks were and any kind of assistance that we could provide to them. And in exchange for that visibility or that openness, we offered suppliers a variety of different opportunities to partner with Corning in a deeper way. We offered them to maybe use our bonded operations. We offered them assistance in reaching out to some of their tier 2, tier 3 suppliers that we may have already relationships with because of other materials that we buy. So basically bringing them into the process and partnering with them in a very, very tight level is the approach that we took. Now, back to the risks and opportunities. The risks were that in some cases, some of our critical suppliers, they were not willing to share their sources of supply. They were not willing to share the materials that they used because of intellectual property. And we respect that because we are the same way. If one of our customers would come to Corning and ask us for our supply base, we probably wouldn't share. So we respect that. But some of the opportunities that we saw was that some suppliers that were going down the path of being more transactional in nature, they actually decided to take us on the opportunity to partner, and we were actually able to turn those relationships into more strategic. In some cases, some of these suppliers actually gained share versus staying where they were or even losing share in the process. Now, we still have discussions with suppliers about tariff and how much Corning is willing to absorb versus them absorbing it. And the suppliers that were willing to partner with us, they found themselves in a better position when having those conversations.
Yeah. Oh, very interesting, especially because sometimes when we have these supply chain conversations, we think of our own supply chain, but we need to remember that this is a big business network and supply chain comes everywhere. So thank you. Anybody want to add something?
I can maybe add that one of the things that are super important, it was important in this process, it was the transparency that we have and the relationship that we have in creating with the suppliers. That day was the day of the truth, right? The day when the people really open the books and trying to understand how this is going to affect my company, the consumer, and the supply chain, and how we can make it this more strong, and of course understanding that it will going to come with an impact.
Yeah.
So when you said, okay, are we really understand from where they source and how they source? So data becomes more important. We normally have systems in our companies that I don't believe that we really use and really extract the value of what we acquire.
Yeah. So it's obviously technology, which, by the way, I believe this 3 next days we will hear a lot about it. We're going to talk about AI and how technology helps us in everything we do. But I think what you said, relationships, transparency, it's also key. So it's not just technology. So Ido, I'm going to go with you now. For organizations with global plans, how do you decide whether to regionalize production, maintain flexibility across multiple geographies? What factors determine that kind of threshold for shifting production, being ready for it?
Well, I want to start with the big picture. And in 2005, Thomas Friedman published a book called The World is Flat. The World is Flat is all about free trade, globalization, offshoring services, manufacturing, etc. I found in my room yesterday when I was kind of thinking about this panel, 2 additional articles. One by economist called Globalization. That was published in 2019, exactly in the middle of Trump's first term. And 3 years later, they published another one, Reinventing Globalization, where they're talking about regionalization and the trade-offs between security, national security, and operational efficiency, like cost and velocity. So the point here is that globalization also follows cycles. And these cycles are hard to observe and to find the patterns because these cycles are over decades or decades. And what is important for us in a manufacturing business where you are locating or making decisions on where to put your next factory or where to invest in capacity, and each factory today costs about $30 billion.
Wow.
You make these decisions when you have to have this strategic point of view and understanding of the strategic trends, and globalization is one of them. Geopolitics and others are included. Specifically in these recent events, we found ourselves not just impacted by tariff, but also by reciprocal tariff. One of our larger markets was basically taking action with reciprocal tariff that in turn created us the need to go and understand what we can do to mitigate the implications or the potential implication. It was a potential scenario. It was not vetted as a final decision. The implication for us was both top and bottom line if the scenario will happen and if the reciprocal tariff will get implemented. What we did in that point, like any other company, you start to put in place a team that mapped all of the potential mitigations. One of them is multi-manufacturing sourcing. And can we take some of these SKUs or all of the SKUs, impacted SKUs, into a different manufacturing location? At Intel, we have locations in Europe, we have in Israel, we have here in the US, in Asia. And you find yourself weighing in a very interesting situation. You're weighing a potential, with some probability, with high impact on your bottom line versus high cost solutions. It would take us about 9 to 12 months to offshore some of those manufacturing in order to mitigate the impact of the tariff. It would take probably tens of millions of dollars to go and do that. But more than that, when you're making such a decision, it's also about organization priorities. Because once you go and do something as big as taking a manufacturing line to a different country, it means that you don't do something else that was on your plans. And finally, you also need to go and deal with underutilized capacity because you're leaving some capacity that you planned in one location, you're moving it to another location, and your network is not as optimized. So I won't tell you eventually what was the final outcome of our analysis, but what I will tell you that in any option, in any case, you can identify those small investments that you can actually go and take as an insurance, as part of your proactiveness, and with that shorten lead times, shorten durations to your final solution. So it won't take me 9 to 12 months to go to final solution, but I can do it faster if I invest small amounts of money now. And that was a huge learning for us. And I think the headline here is to think about that we were thinking about offshoring some capacity to another country because of tariff policy that started here in the US.
Anyone wants to add something?
Yeah, I'll add that there's another important aspect of making those decisions, which is to really understand how you are compared to the competition.
Yeah.
Right? Because if your competitors are in the same situation as you are, then maybe that's going to change your decision. Maybe you'll wait to see if something else happens, right? To see if things change. Versus if you're in direct competition with someone that is obviously benefiting from the situation, then you have to take more drastic actions. So knowing where you are compared to the competition is super important. And I know that sometimes that means that, this is something that only the commercial teams look at. It's like, no, if you're in a procurement organization, if you're in a supply chain organization, you have to be very, very close with your commercial team so that you can have a back and forth dialogue as to what the situation is, so you can make determinations on how to act.
And I think that's a good point, because it becomes a much more larger cross-functional decision amongst your organization, right? It's not just the strategy team making that, it's boots on the ground, people out in the field, that it becomes part of your long-range plan that you mentioned around where do I want to be in 5 years, 10 years, 15 years? Because yes, this is an immediate disruption that we're all facing, but it started, call it 2020 with COVID. A lot of us can think to other things that happened in the early 2000s of disruption. And that's the cycle that ultimately we're in the industry right now, is it's just disruption management. And if you overreact one way or you over-rotate another way, are you putting yourself in a position that ultimately is going to be a longer term impact that you really didn't want? I think that's important, that as you guys both mentioned, that cross-functional element, making strategic decisions, understanding the competition. It's not just, I got to save that $1 today because of the tariff. Like, there are large scale ramifications of decisions that each of us are making in our companies that I think it's causing us to stop acting and be like, hey, can I absorb this for a period of time before I have to go do something larger scale?
Thank you. Okay, Carlos, I have something for you. Tariff costs often require very quick decisions. I know we were discussing this a few minutes ago, so I want you to share that experience. Sometimes choosing to absorb costs is still cheaper overall. How have you and your organization obviously structured to make those trade-offs rapidly and effectively? And I know there's a little bit of conversation going on, so maybe you can expand on
Yes, of course.
the question.
And thank you, Christina. It's a very important question. And I believe some of you want to hear what was the experience, right? Or what's the experience in our companies? I can tell you that we were just around the corner. We made the split from Unilever, and the decision from the company was to start producing everything on a third-party manufacturers. Indeed, I had the pleasure to have one of the key guys who work with me together today, here, Sebastian, and trying to find the best alternative for the company. And we made several evaluations, understanding that the decision that we're going to take, it will be, in the long term, sufficient to manage anything that will happen. We went from COVID, disruption in 2028. So one of the key principles that we established was supply chain diversification, understanding if we really have or put on deep all the knowledge in our products, and we understand from where our suppliers source, how this impact our company and if we have the flexibility. The second important point, which I already mentioned, was data. We bought an amazing systems. My question to my people is, are you really use this data? Are we really extract the value of this? Are we using this data to connect with our suppliers? So if we have that transparency in the process, this for sure is key to leverage and understanding the benefit of impacts that you might have or having with this decision. The third one, which is super important, is innovation. Innovation in this type of situation is one of the key actions that we have to put across all the company and bring the teams together. So that's another part of the question. Yes, what we really are doing in the company is, of course, as I suppose you are doing in your companies, is having a squad teams that are coming from different areas, work once in a week together, trying to analyze and understand what are we going to do by three principles. Simple. Are we going to absorb the cost? Are we going to pass through? Or are we going to resource? With one additional one, we just recently added into this discussion, which is not what is our must to have, what is just in case.
Yeah.
So just in case I can do something different, or I have another source, or I have different alternatives, it creates the flexibility and the resilience that, as you can imagine, this type of business requires. And of course, it gives us the possibility to continue being successful in one side, but also keep health and profitability our company.
So first, as SAP, I always get excited that you bring technology into your answers. Thank you for that. I'm going to go a little bit off script. It's an easy question, don't worry. So you talked about data. You talked about different analyses. Are we going to absorb? Yes, no. You talked about planning. You talked about are we doing with the data innovation? Are you already starting to use AI for everything that you guys are doing?
Yes, of course. We use in AI. I think it's definitely key and unique into your company. But you have to understand what's the information that you're going to extract, okay? And how it fits with your own information. So I'm continue pushing on, do we really extract this value from the systems that we use? Okay. And it's not another source of data that we will be put you on a more difficult spot instead of being more reliable, resilience, and ready to be on the shelf.
Thank you. So we have talked a lot about the topic of the impact in the supply chain. We've talked about the suppliers. We've talked a little bit about costs. But one thing we cannot forget is people. This has an impact on our people as well. And John Mao, I know this is part of your DNA and your passion, and you're very involved in that. So what impact is this constant disruption having on talent in our companies, both in terms of fatigue? I think it's tiring. You were saying that you were planning your vacation and then this comes again. So fatigue, but also new skills that are needed. So anything you can share with us, please. This is your moment.
Yeah, I'll younger myself a little bit with this answer, but when I was in school, I was starting to think about what do I want to do? What do I want to do? Where do I want to go? And all of a sudden supply chain disruption happens in like 2014, 15. And I'm like, okay, well, this is chaos. Why would I want to do that? And then I'm like, okay, I love solving problems. So this is awesome. 10, 15 years later, I didn't realize every single day would just be trying to solve problems in my day job, just to keep the lights on for supply chains. But I think what it's made me realize as a leader is to your point, the emotional
Pocket.
and the fatigue that it has for people. But the last, call it 10, 15 years of supply chain has just been disruption, right? Whether it's like the electronic component shortages, natural disasters, the first Trump administration, COVID, now tariffs, right? Our people are just used to living in disruption. And ultimately, how do we allow them to have that space to not only execute, but also the space to understand that like people are tired, right? It's a lot of work to go from, hey, I'm planning this part, the supply chain's working well, the truck's on time, to all of a sudden, oh, the world shut down, or hey, I can't get this part, or hey, it's now 45% more expensive to get there. And that takes a toll on people. I think the biggest thing that we realized at Ocean Spray was we needed to give people that space to either express that frustration or talk through it, because it has been such an emotional wear for people living through disruption in their day-to-day. As leaders, we become kind of immune to it because that's what we sign up for. But for an individual contributor who's just out of school and, hey, maybe their first 3 months was fine, hey, I can plan the part, my reorder points are working, safety stock is healthy, and now all of a sudden you're stocked out and you've never seen something like that. For us, it was really around the education. How do you provide people the support and guidance from a mentorship, from a leadership, but then also put governance and support around the entire organization? Because unfortunately, a product shortage is now facing a salesperson who's getting frustrated by a customer who's now turning saying, hey, planner, I need this. Manufacturing plant, what are you doing? Hey, I don't have enough workers. And it goes up and down the stream on a constant basis. For us, it was putting people in chairs that either had seen it or had been involved in a situation before to help mentor and guide those folks that were now facing it for the first time, because it can be daunting. And I think that was for us the important thing that we did during this, was the governance team that we put together was people that either had seen it, done it, lived it, but then we helped build people along that were part of it so that they could learn through their first major disruption so that they knew how to handle those things, so that we had more people for the next time this comes. Because there's going to be another one, right? I don't think any of us are naive to think that. But it's how do you get more of your organization aware? And when I say aware, like the cross-functionally aware of what are your up and downstream impacts versus just, oh, I'm really good at procurement, I can manage the negotiation on a part. But how do you understand what that does for the rest of your supply chain? I think was the important part that we learned, specifically through this one, how we brought the organization.
Yeah, similar to you, whenever you had asked that question about talent to us earlier, I thought, well, the natural response I think people are going to say is, well, of course, we need more data scientists, we need more data analytics. But actually, what surfaced for us is that we need more people in our organization that understand the end-to-end and are enterprise thinkers. And what we find is people like what you had mentioned, they may be very expertise in their area. They may have been doing that job for a long time, but they don't understand their upstream and their downstream impacts. And so whenever we are faced with problems, we have to have people that are more diverse in their thinking and taking an enterprise approach as opposed to what's good for their particular P&L or what's good for their particular cost center too. And we need more drivers. So we've got a lot of people. We find that we have a lot of very, very smart people, very competent about putting together data and creating reports, but they're not very skilled in understanding the drivers behind the reporting and being able to connect the dots and being able to even look at the report and say whether or not it's good information or bad information. So I think we really need to put that investment in. That's the foundation of our business. And I think over time, we kind of lose some of that because we're too busy or too focused on cultivating these new skill sets coming in. But we really need to grow people in our business to understand the enterprise mindset.
And I think it's a balance, right? You can't be fully shifted to cross-functional end-to-end thinkers, and you can't lose your SMEs, right? How do you right-size your organization so you've got a balance of both? But to your point, I forget, it might have been my first NACES. We were talking about how the chief supply chain officer role had become like the prominent role in industry where people were going. And it used to be like, hey, it reported to a COO, or it might have been called a chief marketing officer, maybe at a CPG company. Now it is at the C-suite table, right? And I think that's for us, how our people now also need to think is like, as a supply chain professional, you have a seat at the table to help guide sales, to help manage the supply base in terms of what do you need them to do. And I think that's a learning that our people are going through is in terms of how do they show up. And it's not just, I sit behind the screen, I answer my emails, I answer my reports, and I make sure the factory runs or my parts show up on time. Like, you are now being asked to be a strategic thinker, a voice, a critical thinker to help make decisions. Because at the end of the day, we need salespeople selling. We don't need them helping prioritize orders to fulfill the most profitable demand.
No, and we always say at SAP that supply chain is really at the core of the entire business. Everything we do has an impact on HR, on finance. And in my case, I lead a team of experts in the different areas, from design to operate, everything to maintenance and so on. But the real winners are those who understand that it's not only to focus in one part, but actually what's the impact on everything they do along the chain of the entire business. So we're coming to an end. I'm going to ask one last question. I want each one to understand. Maybe, Alex, we can start with you and we go up to here. And then at the end, if there's time, we can do questions to the audience. So Keith, you started this presentation by saying we need to inspire and talk about the opportunities. So my question is, how did this topic, which sounds heavy and critical and like a lot of effort and draining, how did it actually make you as a leader stronger in your organization, you as a leader and or your organization stronger?
Sure. So anytime that you're faced with a challenge, whether there's supply assurance or now, tariffs or whatever challenge may come in the future, these kinds of challenges don't necessarily change who the company is at the core. What it does is it reveals who the company is at the core. And what we saw at Corning through these tariff challenges is the agility that all the different functions were able to find, magically sometimes, to do things that in other times they just wouldn't do. So, for example, qualifying new sources of supply, qualifying alternate materials, things that would change, according to engineers, 6 months, 18 months, were being done in 3 months. Were being done in 5 weeks, right? So, these challenges, sure, are painful, but what they do is they break down silos that were previously in place, because functions realize that the only way to get through it is by working together, collaborating, thinking differently. And then over time, you do change as a corporation, you become much more agile, but it's always that catalyst that needs to be there in order to make it happen. It's unfortunate, right? I mean, you hope that things would happen like that all the time, but sometimes you need a catalyst to break through some of those challenges that people have experienced in the past.
Thank you. Ido.
Totally agree. And I talked earlier about, the global cycles and the long-term cycles, and those are eventually built off many short-term spikes and events and crises. And there's always the don't waste a good crisis. And for us, it means go and see what you can learn from that. How can you make sure that your supply chain is ready to support and overcome the next one? We talked about people. Some of it is exposure to, you need to make decisions, and some of them goes, up the chain. So it creates exposure to the expert in the organization. There's networking. We talked about cross-functional teams. Now you have sales and marketing, and you have the BUs, and you have manufacturing and others, and they come together with you, and you are overcoming the challenge. And guess what? It applies to the next thing, to other areas. And now you build this network and the relationship through a crisis. There's our systems and AI that we talked about earlier. Now we know better on what we need through the crisis, but more important, things we already knew and asked for before now are getting better priority and higher priority, and are getting supported earlier. So, okay, now my supply chain is better with systems and data flows. So overall, I would say there's a lot of benefits if you take the time not only to mitigate, respond, and recover, but also to reflect and use the crisis, if you will, to build your supply chain. I was recently in Ireland. They mentioned the manufacturing location we have there, and the folks there, they have a saying. They'll say, if you don't like the weather in Ireland, don't worry, it will change in 2 hours. And at these days, it feels the same with tariff. And it may feel the same with other things. So you need to prepare your supply chain. You need to prepare your activities to be ready for an ever-changing, frequently changing environment.
Thank you.
I think the only thing I'll add to what you guys just said is I think for us it helped calibrate talent a little bit better in terms of skill set needs, dependencies that we had on maybe certain people that were carrying the brunt of the work, but also skill sets that we need to start developing further. I think for us that was a big eye opener of, are people in the right roles? Have we crafted the roles in the right way to get the results that we want? And or have we done the right development actions to support the actions and deliverables that we need? So I think a lot of conversations actually came out of it from a talent development perspective of, yeah, we can get through it. You can rely on your same 4 to 5 people that you always do, but how do you get the organization to move faster, and what skill sets do we now need to have as part of our core competency going forward to get the whole organization to go, not just on the backs of the key 5 to 6 people?
I'm so proud of my team. I will tell you, we are so much stronger because of the whole tariff situation. We had to make really quick decisions to accelerate manufacturing transfers, which are very costly. And in a regulated environment such as ourselves, it takes about a year to make a manufacturing transfer from the time that you initiate the transfer to the time you're registered and can actually sell commercial products. So my teams accelerated manufacturing transfers that were not originally in their budget, found ways to offset that, and found ways to expedite the transfers. What used to take a year to get done, they found ways to get done in 5 months, like record time. And then it also created just a new way of thinking across the team. So not only did we accelerate those transfers, but we also evaluated everything else that we had flexibility to manufacture across certain platforms. And while we have plants in North America, in Europe, and in Asia, we couldn't make all variations of product in each location. So we made those tiny investments, like Ido had mentioned earlier, just like some of those little seed investments to go ahead and take care of the longest lead time items, the qualification and the registration. So now we're positioning ourselves as an organization to be more flexible. We may not choose to make certain commercial products in certain areas because it does come down to profitability. And if it's not the most profitable place, then we're not going to pull that lever. But the difference is now we have more levers to pull when external situations occur that put us in a better, more proactive position than coming into the tariff situation. So very inspiring to me, just seeing my team in action.
Thank you. You must be a great leader. I can see that.
It's hard to read the last one, right? You have already mentioned everything. There's nothing that I can add it, but I can say that this will continue to happen and more often than we expected, for sure. This is something that is going to come to our agendas in a daily basis. When you were talking about people, that's the discussions that I had today. Are we ready for tomorrow having another news in our desk and find a way to make it differently? And are we prepared for this?
Yeah.
But one thing that I really believe, apart from data, that I really believe that if you use the data correctly, you have such amount of power, is strengthen your relationship. Transparency and relationships stronger is more powerful than effective than a contract. You can have the best contract possible. And that's the challenge that I trying to make every time to my people in my organization, because they often come to me, Carlos, the contract is ready, please sign. okay, do we know the supplier? Do you understand what they do for us? If we understand that, if you have that relationship, I can sign it. The rest will come, and we will handle it. Speak.
Well, that's a very nice way to end this conversation. And I'm going to stand up for this last part, which is the thank you part. First is you spoke about relationships. So I hope you get to network and do a lot of great business connections this next 3 days. I want to thank you to the NASCES team for giving us the opportunity to be on stage here, and all the people behind the scenes and cameras, mics. Thank you so much. Your work is super important. Thank you to my fellow panelists. You had the hard work. Mine was the easy one. I hope you enjoyed and you learned some things. You have some key takeaways. I certainly do. And last but not least, thank you to the audience. I know some of you have been flying from everywhere in the United States, and you must be tired and hungry. I hope you get to stay for longer. We have a cool agenda. And thank you very much. We didn't have time for questions, but if it's okay for me to say this, please remember those faces, remember those names. I'm sure they're happy to share more experiences with you guys. And ladies, thank you so much, and see you next.